Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Okay, so we've got a huge update on the United Healthcare CEO shooting here. It seems as though the person of interest has been found and identified.
Breaking news. I want to give an update now in the killing of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. A man who matches the description of the gunman has now been taken into custody in the state of Pennsylvania. Alexis McAdams has the update. Alexis.
Hey, Harris. Well, we never know exactly how quickly these things are going to move. All morning I've been in Central Park as these dive teams have been doing everything they can to find what I was told was the weapon because they couldn't track it down. Now investigators and NYPD police sources, Harris, telling Fox News that they believe they found a man who matches that same description of the gunman who killed that CEO in Midtown Manhattan. They found him at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. OK, that's like a 5-hour drive from where we are right now. We knew that the person of interest had possibly hopped on a bus and fled town. Now we're being told they believe they have that person of interest in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
The individual has been identified as Luigi Mangione. And just based on the preliminary information that we're getting here, it seems like it was potentially yet again another young left-wing radical who was compelled to violence by his ideology. We're learning now that the suspected shooter in the case was supposedly an ex-Ivy League student, and automatically it feels like the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. It seems like another young radical compelled to violence. The radicalization of our youth via the education system seems to be continuing to ramp up, and it seems we have yet again possibly another example. We'll have to wait for all the good facts to drop here, but based on my preliminary analysis, based on what we're seeing, it's looking like that might have actually been the case. And so obviously I want to talk about the broader context here. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so we had this tragic and obviously shocking case, and now this young individual has been arrested, and supposedly he was apprehended carrying a, quote, ghost gun, a silencer, and a manifesto that reportedly railed against the health insurance industry and echoed themes of anti-capitalist rhetoric. And that right there is what's causing these red flags to pop up. It seems like this incident might yet again be another example of how this militant left-wing ideology fostered in academia is now seemingly leading to devastating real-world consequences, violence, and harm. The early reports are suggesting that he may have been deeply influenced by anti-capitalist and anti-corporate ideologies. And where do you think that came from? I mean, let's just put two and two together, right? Let's find the most obvious explanation. You got an anti-capitalist shooter who attended a woke Ivy League institution. 2 plus 2, well, it's likely to equal 4. I don't believe that the manifesto has been released yet, and so I don't necessarily want to speculate further, but what I do want to do is have a conversation about the broader trend. I think this case could quite possibly be emblematic of a broader pattern of radicalization, this radical view that we see becoming more popular these days from a lot of these activist academic types, that violence is somehow justified in pursuit of these progressive activist goals. And it seems as though the suspect in this case, at a bare minimum, was certainly entertaining these types of concepts. We have a supposed book review left by the individual that I think pretty much brings us right to that point. He wrote in response to Industrial Society and its Future that he found this online take interesting. Quote, had the balls to recognize that peaceful protest has gotten us absolutely nowhere, and at the end of the day, he's probably right. Oil barons haven't listened to any environmentalists, but they feared him. When all other forms of communication fail, violence is necessary to survive. These companies don't care about you or your kids or your grandkids. They have zero qualms about burning down the planet for a buck. So why should we have any qualms about burning them down to survive? Quote, violence never solved anything is a statement uttered by cowards and predators. It's basically right along the line of Antifa thinking. Hashtag bash the fash or burn down neighborhoods because we're justified to do so in our fight against whatever the existential threat of the day is. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. In recent years, justifying or excusing violence has become a pretty common practice on the left. I mean, just look at what's happening around this case, for instance. You know, most people are horrified by this horrible act that was caught on camera, but many on the left, big left-wing activist types, are essentially cheering it on and calling him a hero. And you think I'm kidding, but I'm not. But even public left-wing figures like Taylor Lorenz, for instance, have issued statements recently that seem to justify this violence. And when I say justify this kind of violence, I mean literally justifying this exact shooting.
This issue of Brian Thompson, one of the top healthcare executives in the country, I'm just curious why your first reaction would be to his cold-blooded execution. And people wonder why we want these executives dead. And then you later commented when people were giving you a lot of blowback, I'm not alone, you said. Healthcare executive down with party balloons was on a next post that you commented on. Why would you be in such a celebratory mood about the execution of another human being? Aren't you supposed to be on the caring, sharing left where, you believe in the sanctity of life?
I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Seriously?
I mean...
Joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy.
The idea here is that, well, the guy was an evil capitalist doing evil capitalist things, and so therefore, according to Taylor Lorenz, violence is now justified. Let's not kid ourselves here. I mean, we've seen what's happened over the last however many years. Whether it was the Nashville school shooting, the congressional baseball game shooting, the Portland riots, Antifa attacks, the Waukesha Christmas parade attack, we've seen so many violent actions and violent actors, and it seems as though they all share one common denominator: exposure to radical left-wing ideologies. And of course, where is the nucleus of these ideas? You guessed it, big left-wing universities, who have increasingly adopted curriculums and programs that are steeped in identity politics, Marxist theory, and anti-capitalist activism. Essentially, we've seen the rise of grievance studies, let's call it, post-colonial studies, and critical race theory, which frame Western society as irredeemably corrupt and in need of revolutionary change. The rhetoric has become so extreme, and obviously for some impressionable students, and for some very emotionally unstable and susceptible people, these kinds of narratives can be pretty overwhelming. And when you have an entire group of people claiming that they essentially need to fight the system or fight to survive, and when you have these leftist ideologues essentially calling for and justifying violence, well, it creates this fertile ground for extremism. These radicalized students may be leaving these institutions believing that violence is a legitimate means of achieving their ideological goals, essentially. What that means by definition is terrorism. We're seeing an increased support for domestic terrorism. And essentially in this case, well, that might be exactly what happened. I'm not going to jump to that conclusion just yet. We're going to wait for the information to drop. But based on what we've seen so far, it seems as though that very well might be the case. And so, maybe, just maybe, it's time to start having a serious conversation about our academic institutions and this growth in left-wing radical ideology. I mean, honestly, at this point, from the congressional baseball shooting to the Brett Kavanaugh situation, the Waukesha parade, the Nashville shooting, the attempted assassination of President Trump twice, and now possibly this, and I think that's probably just scratching the surface, we might just be reaching that point where this is becoming a full-blown crisis. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to start taking it seriously. But anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Just felt compelled to open the mic and say these words. If you agree and enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.